How you doing? I'm Matt Farhat.
Jeff Green.
We're here to tell you the importance of cookies over cake.
Now, something I want to ask, Stacy really was horning us about, why would everyone care about our presentation? And it was really obvious to me, and I think the same goes for Matt. The question I really want to ask you guys is who in this class, from time to time, indulges and enjoys a slice of cake?
Well, it seems to be just about everyone.
It's a lot of people. Okay, second question, who in this class, once again, indulges sometimes and likes to enjoy a cookie?
Just about everyone.
Just about everyone. So, quickly, I think that really kind of clears up the point as to who would care, because it seems like this would be near and dear to most everyone's heart.
Yeah, it's more than just choosing a dessert. It's more than just choosing a dessert. Let them eat cookies. Why cookies are the dessert of society. So, the first thing we want to touch on is health. And let's face it, cookies, cake, desserts, they're not healthy. But we are a society of indulgence. In America, we like to indulge. We like to have our little cheat days. We like to have the times where we can talk about, calories. Oh, I did good today, I did bad today. But the thing you need to know is about calories. When we're talking about the caloric intake that you get from eating dessert, calories are made up of, 1 unit of fats is 9 calories, 1 unit of proteins, carbs, they're both 4 calories each. So when you're eating cookies, it's a lot of carbs, it's a lot of fats. It's not particularly good for you. Same goes for cake. But what I'm asking you to do is to choose the lesser of two evils. Go ahead to the next thing. What we have here is a couple comparisons we'll take you through. Just to touch base on. What we have are things like Pillsbury. We don't want to compare Pillsbury to Betty Crocker, Mrs. Fields to Pepperidge Farm. We want to compare within the brand because it's as controlled as we can get to comparing cookies versus cake from a calorie standpoint. So when we found these similar recipe items, we looked at the calories per serving. And as you can see, both not particularly good for you, but you see that cookies are a healthier option. Same goes for Pepperidge Farm. Pepperidge Farm has the chocolate chunk cookie versus the chocolate 3-layer cake. You have 140 calories to 230 calories per serving. Again, cookies is kicking their ass. Same goes for Betty Crocker. Not particularly great options as usual, but when you're going to sit there and enjoy a sweet treat, you might as well go for the one that's not going to go to your hips as badly. Am I right, Dan? Mrs. Fields, horrible options either way, but that's not the point. The point is we want you to do the one that is going to, slow the bleeding per se and not make it as bad for you. And the final kicker we have here is when I looked up at Publix Bakery, which is, I don't know if you guys all know what Publix is, but similar to a Kroger's or Piggly Wiggly, things like that, for you northern people. And you'll see that 3 cookies, that's a total of 3 cookies for chocolate chip cookies is 70 calories, where a cupcake, a freaking cupcake, which are, this size, is 220 calories for one. Good. Family values.
But Mommy,
When you think
I don't
about
want to go
a
to
clip
school
like this
today.
you watch as a kid,
I want to stay
and when
home
you
and
think of all
bake
the different
cookies with
social media that's
you.
depicted with, family values, go right after I go to the next one. You see that people want to stay home and bake cookies with mom. They don't talk about baking a cake, they talk about baking cookies. It's the thing to do. It's what you do as a kid. It brings you together as a family. And we're using cookies here as more of a metaphor for what needs to be improved in today's American families. Go ahead. And that's cooking at home. That brings families together. You always talk about the typical American dream. You have everyone at home for dinner. You're talking about how your day went. And what it comes down to is we looked from a generational standpoint, how often do you prepare meals at home? And you'll see the younger generations, the times where they are making meals 5 or times more per week, 33% compared to the older group of 52%. And you notice that in those older generations, they have the better family continuity. They have the lower divorce rates. They have a better home life as a whole. And that is because of things like staying and having food in with each other, not just grabbing McDonald's on the run or bringing home KFC to eat. You are having dinner together as a group, building your family dynamic. And that's why we're talking about staying home and baking cookies. That is a family event. That's something that means if you're able to stay home and bake cookies with mom, you're able to have dinner with mom and dad too. So we had a little comparison again, because who doesn't love graphs to give you, good scientific backing. We have two different bars. The dark blue is 1993 and the light blue is 2001. And what it is comparing is the number of home meals cooked at home. Okay, so you'll see in 1993, the 1993 bar, for people who cooked at least once a day at home or twice a day at home, was higher than the people in 2001. Consequently, that means the light blue for lesser times per week is going to be higher for 2001. That's just how math works. And the one thing that you'll notice is that it is getting lower as we're moving up to present day. And that's a problem. That's why we are asking, go back to cookies. Go back to cooking at home, going back to being with the family and getting the family dynamic better.
Now, Matthew hit on some good points, guys, but the next I think we really need to cover, and that whether you like it or not is becoming an issue with today's society, and that's the environment. A question I want to ask you guys, if you want to enjoy a piece of cake, what are some of the things that are necessary for that experience to take place?
Probably a plate.
A plate, absolutely. Anything else?
Fork.
A fork, absolutely. What about a napkin?
Probably need a napkin.
Napkin as well, yeah. So that's three things, all the produced ways that you do need to enjoy a piece of cake. Now, on the other hand, what about a cookie? What do we need for a cookie?
Well, you don't need a fork.
No fork.
You don't really need a plate.
Don't need a plate either. And
Probably just put it on a napkin.
you can do that, but you can even go as far as to say you don't even need a napkin. If you're on the way out of the cafeteria, just grab it, eat it, done deal. So we're going to go into a little bit of detail about how we can help the environment by switching to cookies. 13 million tons of materials, we're talking about plastic waste, containers, packaging are disposed of every year in the United States. 7 million of those tons are non-durable plastic. What that includes is the plates, the forks, things that they're not biodegradable, they're hard to get rid of. And to go in further detail, 40 billion plastic utensils every year. Once again, those plastic utensils are non-biodegradable. They're not going to go anywhere. And it's also important to note that if those plastic utensils are handled improperly, those can release dangerous toxins into the soil and turn into the environment. Now, this is kind of mind-blowing. I'm going to give you guys an example to kind of put this into perspective. But on average, an American uses 2,200 napkins per year. That averages out to 6 napkins per day. Now, I want you to think about, as opposed to grabbing a napkin, a plate, a fork when you get your piece of cake, to just grabbing a cookie and not having any of that. I want you to imagine cutting your napkin use down by 1 napkin per day. That's going to be, I think, 7 billion pounds. 1 billion pounds of napkins saved per year. That 1 billion pounds of napkins. Think about how much a napkin weighs, and think about 100 billion pounds of that.
1 billion. That's fine.
1 billion pounds of that saved per year if you reduce your napkin use by 1 per day. That 1 billion pounds of napkins can fill up the Empire State Building. Now, I also threw in there that while you might grab a napkin for a cookie, it's not necessarily needed. You don't really have to do it. You can grab it and go. And that's what I'm going to go into detail about. Today's society, we're always busy. Generation Y is a fast-paced society. We're impatient. We're on the go. We always have somewhere to be. I can look in here and see a bunch of student athletes, people that are parts of organizations. Free time is not always something we can do. We have night class. We have to go in and eat. We don't necessarily have half an hour to enjoy that piece of cake for dessert. But what we do have is time to grab that cookie, walk out of the cafeteria, and have a pleasantly full stomach. I'm going to sum things up with a quote by my partner, Matthew Farr himself. Matt, take it away.
It says, you can't have your cake and eat it too, but you can have a cookie and make it through. You can make it through the day, you can make it through your classes, you can make it through life. Choose a cookie.
So if that doesn't say it all, guys,